name is Casey Williams, Director of Parks and Recreation for the City of Spring Hill, Tennessee, and welcome to Brilliant Strokes. Brilliant Strokes is an intergenerational art program provided by the Arts Build Communities Grant through the Tennessee Arts Commission. And if you would like to be a part of this program, you can register online through the city website, www.springhilltn.org, or through the Parks and Recreation's Facebook page. All of our instructors are local artists, and we are so grateful to them for donating their time and their talents to be part of this unique program. Have fun!
Hey, and welcome back. I'm Susan. We're learning how to paint in 5 steps, and today we're going to talk more about the value study. So it actually is part of the underpainting. It's part of that whole step, but let me show you how we're going to do it today. First of all, you want to set up your easel with your canvas. You want to have your reference photo readily available. You need to have a brush, wash your cup of water, your palette with all your paint already put out, and paper towels. Now, before I even get started, I'm going to take my reference photo, and I think last week we folded it in half in both directions, but today I'm going to fold mine in thirds. And the reason why I do that is it's going to make a crease on the reference photo that looks like a hashtag or a tic-tac-toe board, or some people even call that the pound sign. So you fold it in thirds, one direction, open it up, fold it in thirds in the other direction, and when you open it up, you're going to see the creases are going to make 9 equal boxes. Now we're going to do the same thing to our canvas. First of all, I'm just going to take some burnt sienna, and if you don't have burnt sienna, you just mix some yellow, red, and blue together and it'll come up with burnt sienna. And I'm going to use a lot of water to just tone that canvas. More water than paint. We're just knocking off that stark, bright, white color of the canvas. So now it's more of a mid-tone or mid-value. And values range from black on the dark end up to white on the light end or the top end. So this is somewhere in the middle. In fact, it's probably a little bit on the light side, but that's okay because we can always go darker. Now I'm going to take a smaller brush and paint in my basic shapes. And I can see, well, let me go ahead and put the marks on here. About a third over, about a third over, about a third down, about a third down. So now I've got my grid on my canvas, and it matches the grid that's on my reference photo. So that's going to help me lay in those basic shapes. I can see where my colored pencil starts right above that line, goes off the canvas there. It actually is above that line right there. It starts to go down toward this point right here. There is a occlusion shadow right underneath there. And there's also a really light highlight right there. There is a bit of a cast shadow as well that goes underneath the pencil and off to the side. So now what I'm going to do is grab a paper towel, wrap it around my finger. I'm going to stick my finger in water, and then where it is light, I want to take off that underpainting. So I can see right here is this cast shadow, this highlight, so that it's going to be no underpainting right here on the pencil itself. Where else is it light? Well, it looks like the background is very light. So we're gonna take off that background. And you might as well go ahead and invest in paper towels now because we go through a lot of them. Okay, so I've got a cast shadow, an occlusion shadow, the light value is here, and then there's a mid value left over that we have not wiped out nor darkened. That is our mid value. So light is around the outside. The mid value is something we've not touched. There's a light value down the middle of our pencil, and then the dark value is in the occlusion shadow and the cast shadow. So a lot of times I will go ahead and start painting at this point, even though this is not dry, because everything in life is more neutral than you think it is. So if you've got a burnt sienna underpainting and you're painting on top of it, even if it's a little wet, and blends in with the color you put on there, it'll work, it'll add color harmony, it's no problem. This is so wet and this dark is so thick that I'm afraid to go forward without drying it a bit. So I'm gonna take a moment, I'm gonna dry that, and then we'll get right back on it. Okay, so now we have that fairly dry, not completely, but fairly dry. It's good to go. Step number one was to paint the underpainting, the whole thing in burnt sienna. Step number two was to block in the basic shape and then take that paper towel and wipe out the lights and then take your paint and darken your darks. So your underpainting was your mid-tone, your paper towel was putting in your highlights, and putting in the darker colors was adding your shadows. So this is what we're left with now, which is a monochromatic value study of the painting that you're going to do. So now what we want to do is move on to step number three. And step number three is to scrub in the basic color. So this clearly is a pink pencil, and we're all taught in kindergarten how to make pink. You know, it's red and it's white. But when you do that, a lot of times you're going to get like a very soft baby pink. And many times you have to start with a rose color to be able to get this nice, vibrant, dark pink. And I was always taught that you could mix any color in the world with three primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. But what they don't tell you is that it depends on the red that you start with, depending on what kind of pink you're going to get with it when you put white with it. So you cannot get a dark, dark pink mixing red and white. It's almost impossible. So what you need to do is start with a rose or a magenta and then add a little white to that. And I've got that here on my palette, and it's not a bad color just right out of the tube. This may be a little cooler, so I might want to add a little yellow to warm it up. And so what I'm going to do now is lay that color in, and I'm just scrubbing that in the lower 2/3 of the pencil. And notice how I'm holding the brush. It's like a baton, like you're leading an orchestra. And it's also at the very top. Can you hear that scrub? That's a scrub in when you can hear it like that. Now we can scrub it in, or we can intentionally lay in the strokes where you can actually see the strokes. Whatever you want to do, we're just putting in our basic color. And you may have noticed I went above my line just a little bit because I'm wanting to reshape that shape. There we go. Now, another thing that is that color is the pencil lead itself. Now is not the time to put in any detail, but because I need to mix some colors using this, I'm going to go ahead and throw in a little detail. You may notice that the very tip of that pencil lead is darker. So I'm going to take some of that pink, add the tiniest bit of blue to it, and give a shadowy end to that. If I want to, I could go ahead and lay in some of that dark under here. Okay, and I'm going to clean my brush. Now the other color is the wood. And what color family do you think that would be in? Either a brown or a peach. So I'm going to start out with a little yellow, a little red, maybe a little bit of that burnt sienna, and white because it's very light. Mix that up on the palette and then hold it up. Okay, I need to go lighter and a little redder. Even lighter. Pretty close. Now, because that pencil is a cylinder, the light cannot hit it equally all the way around like that. So I'm going to take my local color, which is that peachy color. I'm going to add some white to it and maybe just a little more yellow just to warm it up a smidge. And we're going to lay that across the top. I may even make it a little bit lighter than that. Clean the brush. And then I'm going to take that basic color and add just a tiny bit of blue to it. Doesn't take much. If you overdo it, you may have to go back and remix, but you want it a little bit darker and a little bit cooler down here near the bottom. As it's coming around. Same thing with the pencil itself. We have the pink here and the pink here, but I want to add a little bit of blue to my pink. Get it a little darker down here at the bottom. So it's going to look a little bit more like a cylinder. We can add a little bit of that to the lower part of your pencil lead. We can take white and that pink, add a little bit of highlight to the top of the lid. little bit of a highlight to the top of the pencil itself, where it's catching the light. Blend that in. And then the really sharp highlight is going to be, it shouldn't be pure white, but I think I'm going to use pure white just for, see how it goes. If it's too white, we might have to mix that with something. Yeah, I think I'm going to mix it a little bit. Soften that edge a little bit. Might even use a paper towel to soften the edge a little bit. But do you see how it's going from a two-dimensional shape into a three-dimensional form now? It's looking more like not a sphere, but a cylinder. We want to get that dark shadow underneath there. I'm going to mix up a red and a black to get this nice dark shadow under here. Now some of that pink is bouncing onto the white table, so our cast shadow actually has some pink in it. Just added some white to that black and red. And at this point, I think I want to paint my background color. Now, what I don't want to do is just white straight out of the tube. We rarely use our paint neat, just straight out of the tube, very rarely. So we're gonna have to mix up a white to go with that. And I'm gonna use a little bit of a phthalo or viridian or some sort of green, kind of a greenish blue. It's a complement to that pink. I think it'll look really good, but I don't want it too dark because I want it to appear white. According to Sherwin-Williams, there's 300 different colors of white, 3 different shades of white. And I may even carve in some of my negative shape as I'm laying that in. To reshape that pencil. And then I can scrub in the rest. finished with step number 3. Step number 1 was the underpainting. Step number 2 was the block in of the basic shapes and the basic values. Step number 3 was the scrub in of the basic color. And now we're ready to go to step number 4, which is our magic stage. This is where it goes from a pretty picture to a masterpiece. And sometimes when you're at this stage, there's a lot to do. Other times, there's not a whole lot to do. But as the artist, you get to decide what that is. So what I would like for you to do is step away from your canvas, go get a snack, go fix something to drink, take a walk around the block, watch some TV, read a book. 30 minutes, come back with fresh eyes. Because when you come back with fresh eyes, you're gonna see things that you don't normally see when you've been staring into your canvas this long. So if I step away from my canvas and I come back with fresh eyes, I might say, what do I need to do to take this from a pretty picture to a masterpiece? And the first thing I do when I step back is I notice that my occlusion shadow is messed up right here. So I'm gonna go back and take some of my red and black, which is what I mixed to come up with that color. And fix that occlusion shadow. Okay. What else might I do? Well, I do notice that the pink kind of goes around the pencil a little bit. So I may want to add a little bit of that in there on both ends. It looks to me like the pencil's the same width here as it is here, but here it got a little bit too big, it grew. So it's quite possible that I could go back with the negative shape and make this a little smaller. Now when I get this to be where I want it to be, although I do see a little something else. A little bit of highlight in the pencil lead, just a little. Whenever I get my painting to where I'm happy with it, I'm ready to go to the next step, then we have to go to step number 5. And step number 5 is simply signing your name. But what I want you to learn how to do is to sign your painting with a brush. Now, I know many of you are smarter than me, and you know you can go buy a paint pen and you can just sign your name right on there. If you're going to use a pen at all, I'd rather you sign the back of your painting. It can be your name, the title of the painting, the date you painted it. But if you're going to sign the front of it, you really want to do it like artists do it, for real. And that is using a regular brush. And I use the tiniest of brushes for my signing brush. It's probably a 00. You pick the color that you want to use. You add a lot of water to it to get it an ink-like consistency. You see there? And then you twist your brush to get a nice sharp point. And then using your arm to lean your hand on. Your downstrokes are easier, so if you need to, you can paint your name using downstrokes. And you want to paint your name as small as possible. I never had to reload my brush, but it is not unusual to have to reload after every 2 or 3 letters. So that's it. Step number 1 is the underpainting. Step number 2, the block in of the basic shapes and the basic values. Step number 3, the scrub in of the basic color. Step number 4 is the magic stage, where we pull out all the tools in our artist toolbox to take it from a pretty picture to a masterpiece. And step number 5 is just signing your name. So I want you to practice this week. We're going to come back next week with another lesson that's going to involve the color wheel. So if you are not familiar with the color wheel or how it's set up, I want you to do some research on that this week. And then next week, I want you to know what your complementary colors are. That's the color that is opposite of the primary color on the color wheel. And we'll see you then.
So, if you like what you've seen and you want to take part in Brilliant Strokes, don't forget, go online to our Facebook page, that's Spring Hill TN Parks and Recreation, or to the Spring Hill City website and register. Registration opens February 18th, and the first 8 people to register for each class will get a free goodie bag. Can't wait to get creative and have fun.